Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé. Let's watch.
Back together. What does make this different?
To be honest, I haven't been in a serious relationship in 30 years. So I had a lot of insecurity that I was dealing with, but I love her. I want to take care of her. Like I bought her a new car. Oh yeah.
So he has said this before, that he hasn't been in a serious relationship in 30 years, which on one hand is interesting. I think we knew that after his relationship with his daughter's mom, that he didn't have a relationship, and I've hypothesized that he believed he wasn't going to be, it points to that insecurity, right? Who knows? But maybe he's just taking a break. Who knows? There's a lot of reasons why people don't have to be in a relationship. They don't have to pursue a relationship. But it sounds to me like, again, a deep insecurity and an avoidance of relationships altogether, because he figured he'd be doomed, or is just better off not experiencing those extremely horrible feelings, or who knows what was going on. So there's that. But he leaves out Rose. So according to him, he doesn't characterize that as a serious relationship, and maybe that's accurate, because they really only saw each other in person for a little bit of time. But anyway, it was just notable.
I mean, my biggest thing is, I want to hear it from you, like man to man, that you're willing to sacrifice for her.
100%. And there are days when I make her frustrated, but I'm going to fight for her.
These kinds of questions always bother me a little bit. I get it, and it's not a bad question, but to me it just completely misses the point, because Ed and Liz and others, Angela and Michael, when you ask them, are you willing to fight for the relationship, they're going to say yes, and they're not lying. They do believe, and they have been fighting hard for the relationship. They've been putting a lot of effort, emotionally and otherwise, into it. That's not the issue. The issue is, are you willing to look at your own behavior and your own flaws that you have, that you contribute to the problem? Are you willing to take responsibility for your issues? Are you willing to attempt to heal from your issues? That's the question that should be asked, because anyone can fight. Everyone fights for a relationship because they're desperate for closeness and attachment in general. But not everyone can admit that they have a problem and they need to work on it.
Our journey is pretty crazy. Ed's jealousy was a huge issue. I felt possessed for a little while, and we would fight a lot about that. But seeing his growth, I do feel a huge change in our trust. We're no success story yet, but I definitely didn't see us being where we are today.
Yeah, I'm reminded of how her love or attraction or want to be with him is genuine. She seems to have legit care for him, and the way she looks at him, the way she depends on him. Well, and then some people say, well, maybe it's dependent, what some people call codependent, but that's not what we're talking about here. That she isn't really in love with him, she just needs him. And it's a hard thing to distinguish sometimes, because there is neediness to love, meaning that when you love someone, you need them. You need them to validate you, to love you, to not reject you, to be there for you. So you depend on them, and that's okay. There's notions out there that you're not supposed to be needy. You're not supposed to, what we mean by needy is overly needy, right? But we should all be needy. We all are needy. We have tons of needs, but we're not robots. So, and I guess robots have needs, electricity, programming. But anyway, so I don't know if I showed the clip, but the friend was saying that she's been through a lot of bad relationships. And I think we've heard that before as well. Gives us some context. And then she also said, I don't know if you caught it, that she felt like she was in a daze, like she was a zombie or something. I can't remember the exact word. And that is interesting. I don't know what she means by that. I wonder what she means by. Are we talking about dissociation? Is she just using that word to refer to the state you go into when things are really stressful? But I think she is a traumatized individual. The way that she comes across, there are a lot of arrows pointing that direction. I can't know that for sure, and I really dislike it when people assume things based on signs. But there are signs that when she's going through stress, that her distress escalates very quickly and very high, that she becomes overwhelmed, that she might even be baseline always stressed. I wouldn't be surprised if she were to be aware, if she were to report, at best, I'm a 4 out of 10. And I've had clients like this before, and it just breaks your heart to think about, right? That for some people, the best, most relaxed, most chill they could ever be when it comes to anxiety and stress, relational stress, stress about who they are as a human being, stress about everything, the lowest they're ever going to get is a 3 or a 4. And the reason for that is early childhood trauma and the things that that creates and causes. So I wouldn't be surprised if she's at that level and then she has huge spikes, and the way she describes it when she's really, highly distressed is that she's kind of in a daze.
You were like believing things he was saying?
So I had a conversation with him about that too. I said, are you just feeding me this,
Right.
or do you mean it? And I've seen a huge change in him. A huge change.
Boy, I mean, take time to like grow together some more. Because I don't want to see you go through all the hurt and stuff you've been going through.
Okay, we see the genuine emotion from her. She says that they talked about it, which is good, but really proofs of the pudding. But then she says he genuinely has changed. And I see some indications of that as well, that he might know himself more now after going through, it sounds like 6 months of therapy. I hope he continues, because baseline, we all need about 5 years minimum of weekly sessions with a therapist or a number of therapists that are dealing with the sort of issues, addressing the sort of issues that we really need to work on. All of us have things and problems psychologically, not necessarily as a disorder, but in terms of our reactivity, our differentiation, self-awareness, that kind of thing. So Ed, I'm just going to take a guess and say that he needs at least 5 years, and maybe he's been through other bouts of therapy. Anyway, the point is that there are signs that he has changed and that he, I'm guessing, is able to interrupt a pattern that's very familiar to him, where he is triggered and then he's off to the races and breaking up with her and abusing her. And he has things in place that can stop him from going down that road. That's the way it sounds to me. Now, I would imagine that he would need a lot more time in therapy to really solidify that and address other kinds of issues, but like the triangulation issue.
Well, I've never been happy the way that I'm happy now.
Good.
And he's made me grow, actually, too.
Right. I'd love to see you where you are now.
I know.
As opposed to where you were then.
That was rough.
Yeah.
Now, some people might point out that it is not congruent that she's crying, which is a sign that she's in pain and sad, as she's saying, I've never been as happy as I am now. And yeah, it'd be notable, but it's not necessarily incongruent. She could be remembering the pain that she went through and or feeling the relief. When we are relieved of, when we feel, oh, I'm so relieved that my life is good now, it's not unusual to cry. There are a lot of reasons why people cry. Sometimes it's because we're sad. Sometimes it's because we're joyful. I'll watch a movie in which someone succeeds and I'll bawl my eyes out, so there's a lot of mechanisms as to that will lead us to cry. Anyway, but it is interesting to think, what is going on with Liz? Is she really okay? Is she no longer being abused? Because when we look at the whole picture in terms of the way it's presented, he at least once was being verbally abusive to her, if not way more often than that. I have a hard time believing that phone call was incredibly unique. Well, you can't be, it's either unique or not. So I have a hard time believing that something like that didn't happen. And I wouldn't be surprised if that happened several times. And she never broke up with him. He was always the one breaking up with her. And she always got back with him after he broke up, and then they really break up. They're on the tell-all. They have to talk to each other because they're in the same room at the tell-all. And that's when the sparks start happening and they're back in a relationship. And so we can't depend on her, given what's presented on the show, to notice her needs and her rights and her situation. She has shown signs that she either doesn't know she's being abused or doesn't know that she can do anything about it, or is numb to abuse in general, probably prior to being with Ed. So when she says, I'm happy, when she says he's changed, when she says, I've never been as happy as I am now, given what we've seen, it's hard to know if that's accurate. It could be. Accurate is the wrong word. It's hard to know if the abuse is still not happening. It's hard to know if there are things that are happening that she just either sweeps under the rug or just doesn't notice as abuse, that she sees it in some other way, or even just mistreatment that's below the threshold of abuse. It's hard to know. I have hopes that things are different. There seem to be signs that they are, but I've been around the block enough times to know that it's impossible to really know at this point.
I didn't expect to love him as much as I felt for him.
Yeah.
So that breakup was rough. I just get scared when we do fight because I'm like, oh my gosh, is he gonna break up with me?
Well, he'd be a damn fool if he broke up with you. That's for sure.
Yeah, so that needs to be worked on for her whenever they have a conflict, to be constantly distressed about whether or not he's going to break up with her, which is rational given that he did that at the drop of a hat so many times. That could cause her, if she's not able to soothe herself or something, it might cause her to be overly compliant and overly desperate and not think about her rights and her needs, that she might just be focusing on do whatever it takes to make him happy so he doesn't leave me. And he has a lot of work to do to build that trust and to make up and apologize for his behavior in the past, breaking up with her included. And I'll point this out, that when people are being victimized by abuse, they sometimes are in such a state of anxiety that all they're thinking about when there's conflict is, how do I make them happy? How do I get them to calm down? Because I don't want to be abused. That could be because of Ed. It could be because of her past relationships. Who knows?
Liz, when she loves with all her heart. That can be dangerous. People can take advantage of her. So I want to make sure that she knows she's able to have her guard down and be vulnerable with him, and he's not going to hurt her.
Okay, interesting statement. He says that she loves with all her heart, and that's dangerous because people could take advantage of her. The way that I would phrase it is, we all should be allowed and we should all experience the glory of loving with all of our heart. What also would be present, hopefully, is the ability to notice when our needs are not being met and or when we're being hurt, when our feelings are being hurt, when we're being attacked in some way. So we can love with all of our heart. Because I point this out because I feel like there's a common wisdom out there that you should never be that naive. You should never just love with all of your heart. And I think loving with all of our heart and experiencing love between two people with all of our hearts, and this could be in a friendship or something, is our, what makes the world go round. If you've ever experienced that, it's the best thing ever in a lot of ways, right? So I don't want to deny us that. What I want to add in addition to that is some supervisor, if you will, someone that supervises a situation and is like, okay, yeah, go ahead and love with all your heart in this situation. And other times like, no, don't do that because it's just going to hurt you. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.